The Creative Writer's Way.
Writing is fundamental. It is our way. From stories come history. From history comes belonging. From belonging comes a sense of where we were, where we are, and where we are going. This is the foundation of civilization.
This is Dr. Skyler Madison. Find your story at skylermadison.com.
Dr. Skyler Madison Fontana and the Creative Writer's Way. Today, I am pleased to welcome our guest, Clarence Stevens, who will share some very interesting stories and his perspective on comedy writing, a true Renaissance man, and comedy writer and preacher. So I'd like you to share, tell us about yourself.
Sure. Well, my name is Clarence Stevens. I reside in the Philadelphia area. I've been writing for quite some time. The majority of my writing has been through comedic writing. And I've been writing actually longer than I knew that I was writing. I remember in elementary school I used to write like little creative stories that my teachers loved, but I never really had a love for writing until I got to become an adult, and I began to write more comedic things and put on some shows and plays, and really fell in love with comedic writing.
Lovely. And so tell us about some of the writing that you ended up doing. I love that it showed up at a younger age, and then, you brought it into fruition and manifested it. And so tell us about Higher Ground and some of the things that you've done.
Sure, absolutely. Well, going back to a younger age, I think that it's something that wasn't really pushed in elementary, middle school, and high school. When you do more comedic things, you're just considered a class clown. But I didn't really know that there was really a opportunity in comedic writing. I would get reprimanded more than I would get encouraged to write. I would write funny things. And pass it around class and have the whole class laughing, and got reprimanded for it instead of people really pushing the idea. Now that I look back on it, I think, if you had somebody who actually pushed that gift in some of our youth, especially some of our urban youth that I deal with a lot. So doing that, I used to run an at-risk camp for some inner city youth. When keeping that in mind, we used to do creative writing exercises, and in those creative writing exercises, we used to buy like flat screen TVs and iPhones for winners just to kind of encourage them. And you'd be amazed at the writing skills in urban areas that maybe not be pushed as much as other things that are pushed. But it's amazing what these kids come up with and how creative that they actually are. So
and
with
I would
that
say
being
that
said,
instead of the word push, I would say value. If they would have valued it. Right?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
That's perfect. If someone would have valued it, I always wondered if somebody would have valued my creative writing at those times.
Right.
Because you really don't know too much about writing and those type of skills. We had some theater, but the theater that I had in school was more, more of the professional, like Shakespearean type of thing. So I just didn't think I fit in the theater with a comedic background.
Exactly. Yeah. And you also, grew into your current role, your preaching. Are there any parallels to writing and preaching in terms of what, is obviously an inherent gift and direction for you? How do those two things, come together for you?
Skyler, that's a great question, because there is a huge parallel in preaching. Is really a creative writing style that I use even in my sermons. I do a lot of illustrated sermons to give a visual output of what I'm trying to say, and I use a lot of comedic points in the sermons, because for some reason I believe that comedy really gives you a pinpoint revelation on things quicker. If people can laugh about it, when they laugh, that's confirmation that they understand what you're saying.
Yes. I'm going to give you a quote that I pulled because you and I talked about this, and I think you're going to really appreciate there's something particularly special about being part of the shared experience that is live comedy, that curious alchemy that occurs when people come together specifically to laugh. And so obviously that's
right.
talking about live comedy. And did you also engage in that in your, in terms of how you developed?
Yeah, absolutely. We had some live comedy, and I tell you, we I just kind of moved around in the dark when it came to comedic writing. We did a little comedy showcase where I was the MC, and we had some comedians. So I decided maybe I should try my hand at stand-up comedy. Didn't go so well. Being a comedic writer and a comedian is two huge different things. I can write the jokes, but performing the jokes can be a little different.
Okay.
But I found that, yeah, absolutely. But I found that the writing was just as I can play the part better than I can do a stand-up comedian bit on the part.
Yeah. And Kevin Hart, he was a stand-up comedian, was he?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, right around here in the Philadelphia area.
And I think I read that he was quoted as saying that humor was a coping mechanism to help him battle the pain of his childhood. In the research that I did.
Right. And I think that's the core of a lot of comedians. That's why I find comedy so fascinating, is because the end gesture is laughter, but the core of comedians is usually pain and stress. Like I told you before when we talked about Jim Carrey and what he was saying, how comedy was his coping mechanism because his mother struggled with depression. So he would do so many comedic things to try to get her to laugh. So he actually became a famous comic because he was just trying to ease the pain. And even Kevin Hart, as you said, his laugh at my pain. And you see John Leguizamo has a beautiful thing where he had a comedic show one time, and he got so in depth in his pain, but had the ability to make people laugh at the same time. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry because what he was talking about was so painful, but still had the ability to make people laugh.
Right. And so I'm going to share also in the research that I did, Scott Weems, who's a cognitive neuroscientist, he said, you're going to laugh when you hear this, humor helped us evolve so we don't have to hit each other with sticks. But there's just something about laughing, right? That's it's like a de-stressor. It's just, they say that people that laugh more are happier. I mean, not obviously, but, if we could just, just find the comedy in it somehow.
Right. Yeah, the Bible says that laughter is like a medicine for the soul, which I certainly believe. And I could tell you that that's really gotten me through some tough times. I have 5 children, and always financially haven't always been on top, I should say. There were times where I had 5 children and my electricity was cut off for 7 days, and there were times when it was Tuesday with no food left in the house and didn't get paid till Friday. So, we had some tough times, but the great thing about it, that I really think that it pushed me comedically, where I had to be the comedian in the house for the kids to let them know that the pain wasn't as bad as it seemed. So I used to write little scripts for the kids, and I used to shoot little comedic movies with them, and they would laugh, and we would have. We'd have such a great time. And now we have the videotapes, and now we can go to family dinners and we watch the videotapes. And we don't remember, with the electricity being off, but we remember those comedic times that we all had together that we could still sit down and watch. Yes.
And so tell us about how you came to write Higher Ground, and what inspired you and what continues to inspire you.
Sure. The reason I wrote Higher Ground was really the condition of the church. I just was seeing
and tell
so
us
much.
about what is higher ground too. I don't mean to interrupt.
Oh, sure.
Give us some background on
Higher
that.
Ground. Yeah, Higher Ground was it was a sitcom that I had wrote. It was about a young pastor who just took over his father's church, who had just passed away, and many people had left the church, and he really wanted to rebuild his father's legacy. But he only had a few people left at the church, and that's where the comedic part comes in, because the characters that were still left at the church were some characters, and it was up to him to try to rebuild the church. So we had the self-righteous one, we had the old school type of deacon who didn't want any kind of change at all. Then we had a couple of young people, and all they wanted was change, and having this young man trying to manage these people while trying to build the church became the comedic aspect of it. And I began to write it because I saw such hypocrisy in the church, and I kind of wanted, in a comedic light, to try to kind of expose some of the self-righteous hypocrisy that was going on, and also kind of expose some of the generational gap in the church that's taking place between the newer or millennial type of Christian and more the old school type of Christian, and just make comedic light of that as well.
Okay. And you also acted in it?
Yeah, I was also one of the actors in it. I had a minor role. I was one of the ones that was the self-righteous, did the opposite of everything the Bible said, but thought I was one of the superior Christians in the church.
That's great. And so, how did you find your way into your also the vocation that you have, which is preaching and the spiritual message that you have to offer to people?
Well, that's a testimony within itself, because I always wasn't looking towards God, through my teenage years and early 20s. My mother was a preacher. My cousins, uncles, everyone, they all raised in the church. I decided to go the opposite direction. When I went off to college, I said, if I never go to church again, I'll be happy. But of course, God has different plans for us.
Or we do. We also have, we as individuals have a difference. So you were called to adventure, so to speak.
Right.
And then you found your way back to your vocation.
Yeah, I was almost shot my way back to my location. I was almost got shot out on the streets, and
really,
when that took place, you didn't have to tell me twice. I learned quickly that this wasn't where I belonged, and this is where my life wasn't heading to.
If you were writing a story, I would say that was your dark night of the soul moment.
Yes. You're absolutely right about that. So once I had that, yes.
Interesting.
Yes. Once I had that experience, I couldn't get back to the church quick enough.
Exactly. That's fascinating. So what type of things are you still writing, and what inspires you?
Yes, I'm still writing now. I have a show that I'm working on now. It's called Nana's House. It's sort of the way that I grew up. My aunt had taken me in, and she was the type that took everybody in. So being there, I was raised with some of my cousins, some of her natural children, and there was just all of us in the house. It was such a multicultural thing, and she was one of those Christian mothers at the church that just loved everybody and cooked for everybody. And you'd be amazed at the multiculturalism that was there. We had a Hispanic gentleman that stayed with us who was dating one of her daughters, who stayed at the house next door to us. We had, one of the country, they loved country music, pickup trucks, but you couldn't tell as much love as we had for each other. The kids would walk over the house in the morning, and they would wonder where the kids were. They would walk over, 2 or 3 years old, come and sit at our dinner table looking for breakfast in the morning in their underwear.
Wow.
They'd be looking for their children.
I could imagine this as a television show or streaming some kind of ongoing thing that you create based on your personal experience.
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely. It was just such a house full. It was just a house full of love, and like I said, the multiculturalism was incredible. I mean, I could wake up in the morning and be like 6 or 7 people at the table. We just didn't know who was living there from day to day.
Right. And I loved also when we were talking, you shared with me some theories about how couched in, comedic, in the genre or something that's comedy, can be serious messages. And, because it's comedy, you don't hit them over the head with it.
Right.
What do you think about that?
Well, that's one thing I love about comedy, because it gives you a certain liberty that other people don't recognize. Like, you can say things in a comedic way that people accept versus just saying it in a speech. People can laugh at themselves easier than they can just look in the mirror at themselves. And I think comedy,
of the guard,
Right, exactly.
It lowers your guard.
Exactly. Yeah, it lowers your defense mechanism. Laughter lowers your defense mechanism. So when you can laugh about it, you can really evaluate it. I mean, I think Chris Rock is one of the most brilliant comedians when it comes to giving out messages. He really talks political. Normally when people have a political debate, it can get very upsetting and charged. But when Chris Rock does it, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, you can laugh about it and really evaluate it. He said something great where he said, if we're just Democrats to be Democrats or Republicans to be Republicans, then we're all crazy. He said, because you don't agree with anybody 100%.
Yeah.
He said, vote your conscience, not your political party. And that had to cause everybody to think.
Yes. And John Fugelsang, if I'm saying his right name, New York-based political comedian, said, political comedy, when done right, is a delivery system for truth. I love that.
Absolutely.
Right.
And, no one did it better than Chris Rock and George Carlin and all these type of individuals. Now, if they were just standing up giving a speech, they probably wouldn't be accepted as well. But for some reason, comedy just allows you to accept things quicker than if somebody's giving you a lecture. When you laugh about it, it lowers your defense mechanism, and you can accept the message better. Yes.
That to me is because I also had this theory that stories can do that. For me, there was a very powerful message in Avatar, and it was one of the highest grossing films, as well as Titanic. But it didn't beat you over the head with it. But we all know when we look at it, what's the real message.
Right, exactly what the message is. Absolutely. And movies have a way of doing that. Like we said before with Aliens, that was really a protest against the Vietnam War. You're watching it, and subliminally what the message is. But the message is taken easier in the form of a movie or comedy.
I didn't know that that Aliens was a protest against the Vietnam War. I'm like, that was a real moment of enlightenment for me. Tell us about that.
Every movie has a certain message, because it's impossible for a writer to not write and put his morals and his beliefs into his writing. So when they were writing, James Cameron was writing it, he really wanted to protest the Vietnam War. So he actually wrote something, and he wrote Aliens as a protest to the Vietnam War. Actually, where we were invading, the aliens had their own planet. They invaded the planet. So they made them look like the villains.
He's brilliant, James Cameron. I really think,
Yes. I love James Cameron too. Yeah. So with that writing, that was his personal protest against the Vietnam War.
Wow. I had no idea about that, but it makes perfect sense. Thank God.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So any other words of wisdom that you would share with writers, and perhaps going down that road? You know, me, for example, I couldn't imagine writing comedy, but what is it what's the words of wisdom that you might give out in terms of how to access that?
For comedic writers, I would say just go for it. Comedy is such a touchy thing because you don't know what you find funny, someone else would find funny. But if you don't put it out there, you're never going to find out if it's funny. And it's really just a matter of imagination. The more lighthearted you can make it, the easier it is for people to accept. And there's a certain truth to all comedy. There's a certain truth to all comedy. That even when comedians are making jokes, there's always a truth to it somewhere. And the great thing about comedy is you could tell someone the truth and they'd be offended, but if you say at the end just joking,
there you
put
go.
their defenses down, but the truth is already out there.
Love it. That's brilliant.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. And for me, it was very enlightening because, as I said, always have been more drawn to drama and didn't really realize how powerful comedy can be, both as a way of personal expression, but also a way to get very serious messages embedded in what we're saying, but without hitting people over the head and getting people to laugh.
Right, and therapeutic.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, very therapeutic. Absolutely.
Well, once again, I really appreciate your sharing all this with us, and anything that you're working on currently that you want us to know about, or how people can access your material, or anything you want to say about your personal, what you have to offer personally, that in case people want to reach out to you.
Oh, sure. Well, you can reach out to me through my email. It's cestevens4@gmail.com. Currently, again, we're working on the comedy sitcom Nana's House. We're currently working on that. And I'm happy to announce I just finished a movie script that I'm trying to get edited and done as well. So please be on the lookout for that as well. And that's more drama. That might be more up your alley too, Skyler, but that's more drama with this script, dealing with some we might consider race relations, but it was really about a bitter relationship that everybody around them interpreted as racial, but it was never racial. It was about a broken heart and her vengeance towards an individual that broke her heart. But it was an interracial relationship, so everybody assumed that her motivation was racial. Right, but it was more a matter of vengeance. So it tears a community apart. But that'll be something that hopefully we can get done and shot soon.
Love it. Okay, and I guess I should say that my husband's a producer here in LA, and I didn't know you were writing this, so send it over.
I would love to.
All right. Well, thank you very much for sharing your wisdom, and this is, to me, was a fascinating subject. And
great.
And I look forward to continuing our relationship with
God,
you.
I thank you so much for this interview. It was very special to me. It's an honor to be on the show.
Thank you, Clarence. Okay.
Sure.
All the best.
Thank you, Skyler.
The Creative Writer's Way.
To touch the reader inside is to tap into where we live. It is common to us all. It is unique to us all. Finding that path is the hero's journey. The journey begins with you.
This is Dr. Skyler Madison. Find your story at skylermadison.com.